Hello and welcome to the great white north, your destination for the iciest cold takes from the frozen wastelands of the north. I'm your host, Charles Constantine, and with me is NP. Say hello, NP.
Hello.
How are you doing this week?
Really good, really good. I'm drinking a
Just crushing it
daiquiri.
out there?
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
like kind of a poor man's daiquiri. I don't know, but it's just whatever I had lying around.
Damn, sounds fancy. I've never even had a daiquiri.
Yeah,
I don't even know what that is actually.
It's a girl drink from Mexico, from sunny old Mexico.
Ah, okay.
Yeah,
You
pretty
know,
good.
like I remember playing like Call of Duty Zombies, and that was like a thing,
Was it?
a perk. Yeah,
Do you?
something daiquiri.
What did it give you extra HP?
I don't even know what it did.
Hmm.
I just know it was called daiquiri.
Nice. Yeah, it's not my go-to, but sometimes you got to use what mix you got in the back of the cupboard.
That's fair.
So,
I got no mix.
I made a bit of a slightly controversial, I'd say, statement on Telegram. I got a tiny bit of grief over it.
It's bound to happen.
Yeah, I was saying I'm not political.
Okay, so
Yeah, I mean, it seems ridiculous. I think, is this a political podcast?
I mean, depends on your definition of the political. But
Yeah, I'd say. I don't think it is. I think we talk about, I mean, it is, I guess, insofar as we talk about nationalism, and metapolitics and stuff. But
yeah, yeah, we do talk about articles that are related to politics. So
I mean,
I'm not sure if it's like again, it depends on your definition. If you mean like advocating a specific political program, not particularly. It's more like just uncovering different aspects of.
yeah. I mean, I do advocate a particular political program too, but my art, I don't think you have to be very political to do that. Like, I can think of a lot of liberals, was my point, who aren't political at all. But if my example was, if you ask them to donate $1 to the Ukraine at the grocery store, they'll say, of course, because they're just innately liberal, right?
Right.
So I'm innately fashy,
Sure.
without, which maybe that's not 100% true, but I wish it was, at least. I don't find politics in general very interesting. I like everything relating and surrounding them. I like the questions of philosophy and human interaction, and like the moral questions of like how we should govern a thing. But if you get, we start getting into the deep political philosophy and stuff, I get bored to tears. Or the specifics, like, I don't know, this conservative leadership race and stuff, I don't know or care.
Well, I mean, this might be a slight digression, but I feel like defining, like, we could get really semantic about this, but obviously, again, same. I'm not particularly interested in the political in the sense of what the current governing body does, but like insofar as we actually do on the show talk about how certain systems work and how different power structures or institutions get established and what you can do in your own sphere. So like I feel like that's also a form of political discussion, and I don't know, I feel like we've both shown interest in that. So
Yeah.
I don't know, I feel like it's again,
Yeah.
it just depends on your terms, your how like what your semantics are. But
At the widest definition, there's no human being on the planet who could be not political.
yeah,
Because everyone has to engage in the society they're in and make moral decisions towards that engagement, or tactical ones. So I guess what I really meant was that I'm not going to read Spengler, and I have no intention to ever do so.
I don't blame you, honestly. Because I mean, I listened to the audiobook of Decline of the West. That's a monster. It was like 64 hours or something like that.
Hmm.
And yeah, I I understand the point because there's a lot in there, and there's some interesting ideas you can pull out.
Mm-hmm.
But I get what you're saying about not not being political in the sense that you need to subscribe to like specific details of some author or some ideology so that you can govern or direct your approach to the world. Because I mean, again, well, let's use the example of Spengler. And I'll even admit, there's only so much I took away because it's just such a huge text, and in the audio format, listening to that much is tough to take it all away.
Oh yeah.
You get to get a lot out of it, especially because there's a lot of dense stuff, and he dives into all these historical examples, listing off a wide variety. Like there's just a lot. So I'm not going to say I got every little detail out of it, but in general, I found a lot of it to be just bullshit and like just so stories. And I'm not even 100% sure that his history or historiography in certain points is entirely accurate, and he makes some tenuous connections between different. He's talking about cycles of civilization and comparing civilizational types to each other, and here's what Magian civilization looks like. Here's how it goes through the cycles of spring and summer and autumn and winter. And then here's Faustian civilization. That's what this looks like. I don't think that level of systematizing is going to actually give you a solution to how you need to direct your endeavors.
It sounds just extremely autistic because it's on the one hand extremely systematized, but on the other hand those categories are extremely sort of romantic and yeah, I don't know. I don't want to put. I haven't read it. I
won't even necessarily say like it's romantic or like because he does do a lot to flesh out the exact details of what is this and what is this civilizational type. What is this? So like it's detailed in it, but again, I think it only serves so much purpose, and I'm not even sure it's entirely accurate. Like the conclusion of these set civilizational cycles, right? That this is a necessary reality, the rise and the fall of cultures. And he describes like, here's the art in this one culture, and here's how it compares to the art in the same phase of a civilization of a different culture. And it's always going to happen this way. And I don't even, my thing is, as I'm listening to it, I didn't even see the connections as being like, sure, it fits if you make the definitions a certain way and make them fit, right? You can make it fit. But I just don't subscribe to this idea that things are this cycle that is necessarily going to happen. And then, we're in the winter cycle. We're in the decline of it's the fall. It's the winter of, the Faustian civilization. Let's just say, we just have to live according to the winter.
Right.
That to me sounds like just a really stupid way to go about it. You're just assuming that things are necessarily bad and there's nothing you can do to change the reality. So just what
it kind of strikes me as, without having read it, astrology or Myers-Briggs, but for civilizations.
That's that's honestly a very that's like, without you having read that to come up, I would say that's a pretty accurate, honestly. And people will probably be pissed at me for saying this, but that's what like a lot of the stuff from Spengler came out to be.
Astrology and Myers-Briggs have a great utility in self-examination and maybe just like trying to understand and place yourself in the world. I guess they have a great danger in that you would either restrict or limit yourself based on,
right,
overly.
That's the key, I think, because you can use this. Sure, you can use these as touchstones and say, hey, yeah, like this. And like there again, I think there's lots in Spengler that is interesting and is useful, and you can pull it out and say, hey, this is a good analysis that came from doing such a deep dive into these different cultures and different civilizations. But to say that you have a whole system defined for the necessity of how cycles occur, and then pretend that like you'd be lost without this.
Yeah,
This is
well,
a
I
map
guess
that's necessary.
has anyone ever made an accurate prediction based on Spengler and his
I mean,
methods?
I yeah, I wouldn't know. Honestly, I couldn't tell you. I would say there's like little pieces here and there that you could say, uh, yeah, certain things you could point out within our civilization that you can say, oh yeah, Spengler talks about this, and you see it here. But you could say there's a lot of different political writings where you can say that's the same for it too.
Sure.
So,
My favorite is still Matt Parrott's Vapor Trad for
well, yeah,
civilizational cycles.
and then that's again that just shows you, like, if you have competing models, and you have to examine what they actually say. I think Matt Parrott's isn't this set cycle though, right? Like he's not giving you a cycle of history. He's giving you
Well,
a model that shows you how things progress, but not in like a
right.
a Whig history. Like everything that happens progressively is, the world is necessarily better because of that.
I think you can pretty easily. I think his model holds up good in the sense that you can say, okay, what is the main tool of this current administration? That will probably be the leader of the next one.
Yeah, so that's exactly like a good little piece.
Um, yeah. Anyway, maybe Spengler's awesome. I have no idea. I don't know if it would be an easy thing to prove or disprove. So
Well, I think it'd be pretty easy to disprove, and it'd be a lot more difficult to prove.
um,
So
yeah. If it sparks your imagination or you can make use of it, grand. But it doesn't seem all that necessary
I,
to me.
I think it's just I think it's just the notion that if you don't have X, Y, or Z, political, or philosophical writing, that you're gonna be lost and you know, up the river without a paddle, unless Spengler's whole model is outlined for you. Like I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, well, it can't possibly be true.
And that yeah, we're gonna talk about some of the stuff in the next episode, like the technology and technique, um, some of the stuff that George Grant wrote on that topic, technology and empire. But I've been listening to like Ellul, Jacques Ellul, and his the Technological Society.
Hmm.
That was There's a lot in there that I think would technically disprove some of what Spengler said.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
right, like just the notion of technique and technical progress and understanding how that plays a role, especially when you compare it to uh, pre-modern societies and how they approach technique versus how, like, there's such a drastic difference, and that's an entirely new paradigm that's being described that Spengler, I don't think, has in his analysis, and it's tough.
Yeah.
Again, unless you're at the point that Ellul was at, or where George Grant is at, when he's looking at how technique in the modern age operates at such an accelerated rate, that no man can attune himself to the rate of change. That's a whole other can of worms that doesn't fit into a set cycle. And so
No.
that, again, there's all these other factors after Spengler that come into play that you're gonna. So that's why I
Oh,
don't think anyone has a set model, right?
yeah. Okay, but it does. You raise a good point. Then maybe I got to give Spengler his due here. I don't know. I've never. But like what I like about Marshall McLuhan that we read, and what sounds like
Yeah.
a little's doing here, they don't say anything actually that shocking or practical. What they do is, well, I don't know about Little, but McLuhan, he gives you a different lens to look at the world through. He's all hyper focused on the medium and the methods of delivery and how your brain interacts with these. So when you then look at the world, you can different things pop out at it. So that's like for the real value of philosophy and writing and stuff like that is that it gives you these different frames. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think the important thing. This is sort of my take based on a lot of the stuff that I've read. And again, this goes contrary to people that put forth like a set system, right? And
Mm-hmm.
Marx would fall into this as well. Like here's how things are going to work. It's determined, economic determinism, or any sort of determinism. I think the reality is more so that it's an open horizon that unfolds before you, and you can never fully come to a conclusion about that horizon. And part of the role of philosophy is to always be exploring the bounds of that horizon. And then as you explore, you'll find more opens up. And as the world changes, as the life world that you inhabit, as new pathways open up, there's always something new unfolding. So you never can capture it entirely within a particular worldview, a particular system. So anything that stops short of that is missing the mark. So there's value in what those philosophical endeavors have showed us in that lens it opens up to you. But then there's still more horizon opening as we progress. So that's I think you have to take that more open-ended approach.
Yeah. I like my brain's engineer brain. So I tend to discard anything I can't use pragmatically. That'd make me a bad philosopher. But most philosophers are bad at building things. So I guess there's it's just a question of focus. Do you want to wander as far into the bush as you can and see all you can see, or do you want to gather up what sticks in the most efficient way possible and bring them back?
That's interesting. You know what? I don't know if I don't. That's going to actually tie into when we talk about technology or an empire. Is that exact? Well, not exact, but a very similar topic to that comes up, in one of the essays. So I think we should leave it at that because there'll be a lot to talk about.
Okay.
When we get to that reading.
Good. I look forward to reading that one. We'll take a break here and we'll be right back.
Sounds good.
We're back. And we just had a little internal debate here because we don't want to exhaust you guys on the women's topic. But it is I'd say it's one of the four main topics that guys like to talk about. The others being gun, food, and philosophy. So I don't mind hitting women some more, so to speak. Based. But not based. Yeah. I forget what we were going to talk about is regarding them.
Well, because we were having a big discussion on this, and there was we were talking a little bit about the importance of monogamy, obviously, and the whole the notion of love and romance, I guess, in our current era.
Oh yeah,
that was sort of what we were hitting on.
Yeah,
right?
I just pointed out that for all the talk of women you see on Twitter or online, especially in our sphere, the concept of love just has completely disappeared. And that's possibly because talking about it's kind of gay and mushy, and no one wants that. But it's also, I think, because guys on our side, especially the romantically unfortunate ones, have an extremely utilitarian approach to women.
Yeah. Well, and I'll even admit that I have that issue for sure. Because you are kind of led into that mindset to say, okay, well, so many so many people are broken, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can just say, wow, it sucks out there. Look at how bad it is for all these people. Well, now I have to be much more picky, not because I expect these high standards of the best of the best, but because you're trying to avoid something that could be disastrous for you.
Yeah.
Because there are options that will not turn out well, right?
Yeah. And I mean, since the competition's so high, because, so many women are undesirable now, as to our guys. If you don't want a whore or a fatty, you have 1/10 the choice of women that, say, are fathers did, right?
Yeah.
And so their competition over those desirable women is just ferocious. So that, I think, is what lends to the utilitarian thing. You're like trying to, I don't know, what do the incels call it? Looks max. Or you're trying to do a
Yeah.
pickup artist game. Or even
Well,
you and me have had pickup artisty conversations just trying to, because it's just, it leads you to it. When you're competing that hard, you're going to start really, same thing over weightlifting. It gets just overanalyzed to death.
yeah, you become like an autist about this. Like, well, you said looks maxing, but I would say even it would be a min maxing. Like you're trying to find all the variables that you
Mm-hmm.
can max out on with the minimal effort or minimum investment into other areas that matter less. And so you're doing this as you're trying to choose someone, and you're also doing this for yourself. And then I think bringing this back around to the notion of actual love and romance, I think you end up, and you said this, you lose a lot of that in the process when you're into that over analyzing, just over analyzing things.
Yeah. So I guess my advice applies mostly to you, who gets a ton of dates but still like has trouble. You're having trouble choosing. And I guess as like I kind of just think back to my younger years and when things were easier or whatever. I'm just like, well, let your heart and your dick decide for you, and just like let yourself fall in love.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think that's honestly a good point. And yeah, not being able to just inhabit that kind of uh, I'm not sure the specific terminology I would want to use for that, but that sort of just almost like retard like approach where you just
mm-hmm.
let loose. Because I think back to like before I knew anything about woman or
Every
you
now
get all
and
you
then
go
you'd see that one, and your heart would just like break. You'd be like,
yeah
I
yeah you
need to have her.
well it wouldn't even necessarily be that it would be like you just stumble your way into dating a girl
Mm-hmm.
and you had no clue. Like you didn't need any red pill, pickup artist tips. You didn't need to know like, oh, here's your frame and X, Y, or Z. You kind of just like this has happened to me in a couple of occasions when I was younger, where it was just you just trip and fall and you just roll and you're like, oh, I swear I fucked everything up and I'm just
Yeah.
rolling
No.
and here I am. And that goes back to the whole. It's kind of cheesy, but you fall into love, right? You don't like make it. You don't like
Yeah. You don't construct
so
your way into love. No.
yeah, so I think there's some value in. Again, I think most people listening to this have their opinions on the woman, and they have their their red pills or whatever you want to call it.
Maybe some of them even have techniques that they use consistently in work. I doubt it, because it is usually a stumble into it, and it's really hard to generalize an approach that works.
Well, yeah, yeah. I guess the point is like, hey, you know all that and you have all that, but maybe just sort of put that to the side, let that take the back seat, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's tough because it's how do you practice being like taking that retard trip and fall approach? Like, how do you practice that? You don't you just right?
It's like a Zen thing. You just practice, like you just enjoy yourself. Go and have some wine and oysters with a girl and see what your heart decides. You don't have to think about it once.
Yeah, and I think there's also an element of just being patient too, right?
Yes.
It's okay to just again doesn't mean like sit yourself on the sidelines, but it just means like it doesn't have to happen tomorrow night when you go out.
No, and as I get older, I've had some really panicked moments that way, in like little dry
Yeah,
spells and stuff. But I'll say the cure is always, uh, well, the main cure for most guys nowadays is you just need to be around women on a daily basis.
and I understand that can be tough, especially if you're a
Yeah.
working guy. I think we had this a little bit of this conversation too. Like there's a like you're a middle class or maybe a working class guy who has to put in a lot of time, and maybe you don't have access to the same social circles that you had, and you're
Hmm.
trying to set yourself up in a way that makes you viable. and then this sort of conflicts with your ability to have the same social circles. Whereas if maybe again there's a bit of a class distinction here, where you're an upper class or middle upper class guy who doesn't need to work in the same way, or maybe your work lends itself more to better social circles, paired with a better income, and then so there's a variety of things that come into play in that whole dynamic. And so that, yeah, I get that some guys are in that tough position where, what can I do right now to set myself up so I'm can actually build the life that I want to be able to provide, but who am I going to build that for when I don't have time or don't have access to the social circles, right?
Yeah.
So that's really the crux of a lot of guys' issues, I think, too.
So when I was between contracts one time when I was about 27, and I hadn't worked in restaurants in some time, but I was a bit bored and I didn't need the money at all. I was making shit ton of money doing contract work, but I was like, fuck, I'm gonna go just work in a restaurant, pick up a waitress, and did. Just put yourself around the women, right? More recently, I had to get onto the online dating or whatever, Hinge, because literally my only way of accessing women. Boxing, I met a few, but it wasn't, say, a wide enough sample to yield any results.
Right.
So I made sure anytime there was good sunlight out that I got better pic. Like, what do you need to do that? You're gonna have to get autistic again in that, and you're gonna have to make sure your pictures are really good. So you go make sure when it's sunny out, you take a nice selfie of yourself. Or I even considered this. I never did it. Thank God I never needed to. But you could get a friend to take some professional pictures of you that look candid but are good. That would be the way to maximize that, I think. But you'd want to be getting matches every week, I think, would be the goal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then once that's taken care of, then just be retarded, because women are retarded and there's no way to predict what they want. The ones that it's just there's no, if anyone could ever tell you what to do, they would be a trillionaire. But they would also probably have 3.5 billion women that they would have to themselves. So it's you're trying to capture sunlight in your hands. It's not going to happen. All you can do is pull your balls out and start sunning them.
Sure. But don't do that.
Not literally that. I meant it purely metaphorically. Don't be a baptard.
I gotcha. And I think just to close it off, and the other thing we talked about was like the social circles and status within social circles. I think another important thing that often gets missed too is when you're attracting, like there is obviously value in status, and if you are able to leverage your status within a given social circle, that can that's what works a lot of times, right? So
yeah,
obviously there's guys that are in certain, like, you could say, normie social circles, like in the average world, right? There's all kinds of different ones, and guys have themselves at the top of a given like niche social group, or we see this on the larger scale, like celebrities or whatever. There's always some social area that you can, if you develop your status in an area that you're good in and leverage that, as opposed to always trying to jump into other circles, other social spheres. That's another thing to keep in mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think one thing that I guess we miss in whatever our sphere is, I don't think there's very many women floating around, so that's not as relevant. But that's something to keep in mind.
No. You can leverage your status within any sphere on women of any sphere. If you now, you might not want to tell me you're the highest ranking fascist in Canada on the first date, but you might want to hint at it. And if you do, to get laid, I'll back you up on it. I'll pretend that you're the new Führer.
Well, and I like that. That's true. Yeah, I think that's that fits, because you can. I mean, again, you don't have to use it with this, but you can, anything you're good at, right? Like use your friend. Like if you're on a sports team and you're good on the sports team, use the friend group that is your sports team to leverage that when you go out with your team,
Yeah.
right? You can
Oh,
do that.
and if
There's all kinds of ways, right?
if you build up your friends, even wingman for them, they'll build you up, which is you can create a self-generating clout machine by uh, by just bragging and talking up your friends or joking around with them, making your own little world that's
Yeah,
appealing to outsiders.
and going back, like obviously, I think a lot of guys have difficulty having those social circles, and there's less of that available, um, and for whatever reason, right? There's a lot of reasons. There's not as much community going around, to participate in. But I think that's something that if you lack, you should be finding ways to build that up again.
Mm-hmm.
What can you do to have your group of friends that you go out and you can signal your status within that group when you're out and about in public spaces like that? Those are the kinds of things that are tangible in the real world. Like you don't necessarily, and this is just beyond looking for a woman. It's um, you know, reestablishing community and having your group, having your tribe.
Mm-hmm.
So like you don't need to have a whole political organization to do something. You can just build your tribe up, and then again, not just have it as a tribe, but have it engaging in the real world. And that's like we always say in the show, like just be normal and be able to go engage with people. And if you have your group of guys that you can do that with, that's the next step.
I should probably go without saying, I don't think I need to tell any of our audience, but don't hang around guys who put you down or belittle you.
Yep.
Like in a real way. Not obviously you should be hazed and joked and whatever.
Call your buddy an idiot.
But yeah, because you'd come away from talking to people like that and you just got this uneasy feeling.
Yeah.
I had a friend like that in school, and then I was camping with him and some other friends, and then we were all driving back, and one friend kind of mentioned something. I'm like, yeah, you know what? I feel the same way. And it hadn't even occurred to me because we're all just drinking and stuff, but he's always got some snide comment, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had the exact same thing at one point. So
Yeah. So avoid that guy and don't be that guy.
that's right.
All right, that's our don't and so the sermon I guess was on love and like just be a horny retard. It worked for millions of years. Sometimes it's okay to just see her and want her, and then you do what you got to do.
That's right. As long as you're married.
Well, yeah, of course, and then stay with her and be monogamous and marry her and have white babies.
Yeah.
Duh. That's not the hard part even nowadays. The hard part's meeting them. So be a horny retard. Let's move on to that's how to tell guys to be romantic without sounding gay about it.
No, it was good. It was a good way to end it. That was good. I just laughed at just because, of course, we finished like the girl talk, and I read a tweet. Oh, girlfriend. It's like quote, you changed ever since you got a GF. Well, of course I had to change. I had to go from Ryan Gosling in the movie Drive to Ryan Gosling from the movie La La Land.
Well, these fucking Zoomers and their Ryan Gosling, I'll never get it, but good on them. That's really funny. So we got a kind of an interesting bit of reading. We're doing a couple Substack articles from a guy you might know. He's been around, at least in one little corner of the sphere for a while. His name's Randy, otherwise known as Garfield Bot, otherwise known as EggReport, otherwise known as, what is it?
Come lasagna.
Okay, perfect. So he's a serious guy. But, he is a serious guy, almost a deadly serious guy.
Yeah, very serious guy.
Yeah, he's a very sensitive guy, to the point I feel uncomfortable reading him now and then. But very insightful. I'll criticize him right off the bat, too. Sometimes he does big leaps, and doesn't like really fill in his argument that good in his essays. But it's because I think he's approaching it from more of like an intuitive, insightful kind of way, not systematically.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
So we'll do our best to fill in the gaps. And in fact, a little foreshadowing, there's one I really need help with on one of these. But so the
Okay.
first, what was the first article we read of his called?
Yeah, well, I think we're gonna go through two articles, and the first one we'll do the anti-hero one, and then he has a one that's about Sky King, and well, this episode is gonna come out a little bit later, but this is just the anniversary of that incident. And there's a little bit of overlap, I would say, even though they're written a couple years apart.
Yeah.
But this anti-hero one, I think a lot of guys need to read it.
Yeah.
It's the message here is directly at, you know what? I feel like almost everyone is guilty of thinking there's some sort of anti-hero, especially in this sphere. At least the anti-hero in the way he outlines it in this article. And basically, I mean, what he says is it's the little voice in your head that tells you you're beyond redemption. You know, this notion that like it's good, the world needs a change, but you're corrupted. You're that bad guy beyond redemption. You're not going to be evil. You're still going to encourage good, but you're going to indulge in bad behavior, and you're going to pretend like you're not good enough to truly be good, right? And that gives you a lot of leeway to escape responsibility. That sums up a lot of what he's saying. Would you agree?
Yes. No, that's well put. And I think we can all start thinking of ways we've done this. Even on this show, perhaps, maybe regarding women or drugs. I've said stuff like that, like you guys should do better than I ever did when I was a kid or whatever. It's too late for me now, and that's he blames it on pride. He says it's a false humility.
Yeah. Well, and I think he's right. As far as I know, and I'm not entirely educated on like theological questions. He's obviously writing from a Christian perspective, but this is something that comes up in I think like, certain writings of the saints. I've seen this before, but this notion of like you said, this false humility or this overselling humility because you think it's virtuous, and you're pretending you're worth less than you are. And then really what you're doing is engaging in a sort of pride. It's like I said earlier.
It's just you're running cover for your own bad behavior too.
Right. Like, oh man, I'm such a bad, I'm such a sinner. I'm such a bad person. What am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? Oh well, I'll just encourage good, but man, I'm too far gone. Look, it obviously humility is good when it's genuine, but the difference is someone who is humble in the appropriate ways, as far as I can tell, at least, still understands that they have access to redemption.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the major difference. Is the person he's describing here acts as if they're beyond redemption, and then that all that does is open up the path for you to engage in vice, while pretending that it's simply because your humility is allowing you to recognize yourself as a sinner who is just not good enough, and then so you get your little bit of decadence, and pretend that it's because of your humility.
Yeah, I don't think it feels like that when you're doing it. It's
No.
more when you're justifying it post hoc, though.
Right.
Like, I've never once felt like I was drinking out of a false humility. However, when I talk about drinking or whatever, then yeah, maybe some of that can come in. The there's he says right in the title that it begets a sort of apocalyptic thinking, and I guess that's my question for you. How do you? I missed or I couldn't pick up that last jump where he says that this sort of thinking leads to an apocalyptic mindset.
Here, I'm just scrolling through to see if he. Um, okay, yeah. So this is the paragraph where he actually taps into it. Right, I'll just read it out. So he says, "Messianic thinking then leads to apocalyptic thinking,
Mm-hmm.
because to justify divinity, you always need an apocalypse, and before you know it, you filled your head with ideas of the end of the world, which, I mean, it's the end of the world we're trying to prevent here, so we're going to need every hand we can get, even a brooding, edgy antihero who uses a little bit of the dark side of the force, right? And justify the means." So what he's saying is you're kind of leaning into this notion of like, the end of the world, right? This is really important for us to stop, and it doesn't matter who is taking up arms, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because like he says, you need every hand you can get. So if it is the end of the world, well, it doesn't matter if you're kind of corrupt guy. Like I think he says earlier, like you have this notion of a gray Jedi where you can just kind of walk the line between good and evil. And well, if it's the end of the world, whatever, that guy is still worth something. So
Okay.
he can use his edgy anti-hero to
Okay.
jump in and save the day, like you see in a superhero movie.
I,
Right?
I guess I just didn't relate to that because I've never taken my own self apologetics that far. But that
Right.
does make sense that it could go there. First, you self apologetically just say you're beyond redemption so that you can continue your behavior. And then you think you get messianic about it because that provides even further cover. And then, yeah, that can butt into then apocalyptic thinking. Sure.
Yeah,
It's a big stretch, Randy. Like I'm not.
you're right. I would agree. Like it is kind of a stretch. Because what he draws out of that is he talks about this act of counting and weighing your own sins in an attempt to barter with God.
Mhm.
But he has a couple good lines. God is not a merchant looking to scope out a hot deal.
In the one GC there, I think it's called. Oh, I'll never remember this right. Pelagianism. It's one of the heresies, and it means thinking that redemption costs something.
Uh-huh.
It's a literal like Orthodox or it's a Christian heresy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that's sort of the issue he's driving at is this. If you're in this mindset of being the anti-hero, being the gray Jedi, and you're trying to carefully walk the line so that you can gather up the good and the good sentiments enough that you can balance out your bad deeds, and again trying to make this deal. It's what he says is no, like you need total commitment, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not this thing that you can just barter away and pretend like you're going back to what we said earlier, pretend like you're above redemption. No, you redemption is there for you, but you actually need to commit.
You know what it reminds me of now that you mention it? Getting fit.
Yeah.
Getting fit's actually 100% free. It just takes a lot of commitment or a certain amount. But then most people would rather just pay someone to make them fit.
Right.
And then get mad when it doesn't work.
Yeah, and I think the other issue within all that is the sort of half-assed commitment.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like it's again, he says this in the article: 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Right? I can't like it just oh I get it. I get that you need to be good and moral. I get that, or we talk about the fitness stuff. I get that I need to have these habits and put in this amount of effort. I get that I need to do that. I get that's relevant. It's just I'm really not that guy. I'm not good enough, or I'm not all the way there. I just can't commit all the way. I can't put my faith in this process. So you know what? I'm going to root for you guys. I'm going to be on your side, guys, but I'm not going to be the one jumping all the way in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we bring that to like the larger scope of again people in this sphere, and then the guys that need to hear this, it goes back to that question about okay, you don't like the state of things. There's certain things that you're facing in this world that aren't good, right? And people are getting a raw deal for however. There's tons of reasons, right? There's a lot wrong, you could say. And you can complain about degeneracy and say, hey, like this isn't good. I see this black and white crime everywhere, and I see this corruption, and I see people having less access to the structures to build a family, and it's hard to own your own house. There's all these things that are wrong, but are you actually going to commit to an approach that stands in contradiction to that, or are you just going to acknowledge that those things are bad and kind of sit with just 1 foot in the door?
Yeah. Yes. I don't have anything more to say on this one. I think it's straightforward in that way. I wish Randy had an editor,
Uh-huh.
because I think sometimes he could just he makes a nice spider web, but there's like a strand missing here and there. It just needs a little fill in, a few little gaps.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
and
Well,
then.
there's really good lines, really good
Yeah, I wouldn't
paragraphs,
take anything out. I would just add a little bit.
and then they just need like a little bit more. A little bit more there. I think the paragraph that sums it up the best is he says the reason modern mainstream media sucks is because it's written by people with total lack of commitment to anything. And then he says the anti-hero is the lack of commitment crystallized to an archetype, whereas the actual hero is a commitment. It's a total commitment. So Giga Chad is a hero. And he says the way this manifests in you is your lack of commitment. I want a good trad life for you, but me, oh no, I couldn't possibly have one. I want you to have a loving wife and many children, but me, I'm beyond redemption. I don't deserve that. So I can just have a little degeneracy. I have a little bit of sex with floozies and put notches on my belt. I want for you to be healthy and strong, but me, oh no, I don't deserve that. So I can just indulge in being fat and eating trash. And that's basically what sums it up. And you see this anywhere, right? We see this in the sort of like I would say the BAP sphere quite a bit, and or like the med gold types saying, well, everything's bad, everything's falling apart. There is no love, so just engage in that degeneracy, right? Like, who cares? You can reject the modern world, but you can still take what you want out of it. But you aren't rejecting anything if you're just indulging in everything it has to offer you while having this false sense of negation. And that's the biggest trap to avoid.
I finally realized about BAP. He's not trying to avoid the modern world at all. In fact, he quite likes the certain parts of it, like some of the degeneracy. What he's really trying to avoid is sort of the Prussian schooling, managerial, boring cubicle office aspect of it, which he's probably right to criticize, and that we shouldn't be castrated and stuck in gray cubes. But instead of, but I think he'd be perfectly happy for all the nightclubs.
Well, I mean, like that exact thing manifests in all of the you could say like the aesthetic postings.
Mm-hmm.
Here is this rich, affluent, lifestyle in a beach somewhere and surrounded by a woman. This is the life you need to envisage. And well, that there's nothing actually revolutionary about that because you can have that. This world gives you that if you're willing to cynically um, backstab your way up to the top and exploit people with whatever kind of marketing tactics,
Sure.
e-commerce,
Or
brand.
here's a free one right here that anyone can do at any time. Go take little programming contracts and then go hire an Indian guy to do them for you for half the price that you were hired at. Anyone can run that scam every day, all day, for free money.
And that's just it. Is there's all these things you can do to have access to that lifestyle that gets um, idealized in these sort of aesthetic postings and being you're a modern conquering band of warriors or whatever. But really, all that is just like you you're living the same lifestyle as like some trust fund kid. You found the easy path to get the same wealth with the same amount of free time to do that, and that's really what's being promoted, and that's sort of the same mindset that we see in this anti-hero. Um, yeah, you have access to all the degeneracy of the modern world, but you're based, so it's okay.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's yeah. No, it's all right. I'm a total philandering pickup artist because I voted for Trump and I hate liberals.
Yeah, I'm a frog on the internet. I'm part of the frogs, but I wouldn't be any. You would in the real world you could not differentiate me between any other uh, frat bro, trust fund kid.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's so. Charles, guess I have a
Yeah.
question for you, tangentially related. Are you? Do you feel like you're able to recognize virtuous men via the internet?
Um.
Like, say, a
Personally,
Telegram group chat.
I would say yeah that you can do that. I'd say I want to toot my own horn and be like yeah I would say personally I have a pretty good track record with following the right people
Yeah, me too.
and avoiding the wrong people.
No, I agree. And I think I can get a pretty good gauge of someone's character spending enough time in a group chat with them.
Yeah, there's gonna be cases where someone just because you can technically be anyone for a certain amount of time, but I think it shines through.
It's pretty, unless the guy's just a master, talented Mr. Ripley kind, it's going to be pretty obvious what kind of person the guy is. Not many people are that good at acting or pretending.
Mhm.
Like that
Um,
Kaliak guy. He had a lot of followers, and I was just like, this is a brown pedophile.
yeah, that
I knew it
was
long
weird.
before he was like, I'm a brown pedophile.
Yeah, well, I mean, even for me, like BAP, like the BAP, I literally never looked at it and was like, wow, this is really good stuff. I really like this. This is the way forward. There was
No.
never a time, and so much in that, since I first saw that has sort of vindicated my stance. But I just had like a visceral like, no, this is kind of dumb.
I
I'll never
think
read his book. Like,
I was able to see through it too because when I was a skinny 20-year-old, I started thinking of the world that way after I got my heart broken. I'm like, I'm just going to be a Nietzschean overman who follows his own rules
yeah.
and whatever. And that lasted, what,
Well,
a few months before I realized I was just an asshole.
I think Randy calls that out, right? Like the secret good guy who does a little bit of bad things, and like everyone thinks about this at age 12. Um,
Hmm.
you have basically you have that whole mindset of just well, I'm gonna be my own guy and do good and do bad, whatever needs to happen, so I can overcome. But that's again, that's not really enough. It's cool when you're like 12 when you're figuring things out, but actually commit to something.
Mm. There's a rare example that barely exists, but I met one of them at an engineering firm. This is the counter example.
Uh-huh.
And this was a good Christian, nerdy man. Just an absolute engineer nerd, right? Like skinny, really nice guy, uh, awkward. Had just been married for like a year, and she ran off. Like, and he didn't see it coming. Like, she just like
Yeah.
he woke up when all his money and his wife was gone. um, everyone kind of hears a story like that, or um, and no one wants to be that guy. And why would you? And no one should be that
Mm-hmm.
guy. If you were kind of immature in your reaction to it, yeah, you might be like, I'm gonna be this Bappian hero, Nietzschean hero, whatever, uh, so that I don't wind up like that. But yeah, no. So don't worry. You can be a virtuous guy with full and redeemed and act good and even be a kind, sweet, nerdy guy and not be that guy. You just have to keep your strength.
Well, yeah, like I guess just to round this out, why wouldn't you want to take the hard path where you just fully commit and just fully be a pillar that stands against everything you dislike? Why do you why would you not want to do that? And if you don't want to do that, then at least spare everyone else and stop pretending that you can play this balancing act of sort of knowing what's good but not really following through. Like, don't play the act. Like either commit or step out. But the lukewarm approach, I think, is the worst way to go.
Yeah, I think some famous guy had something to say about lukewarm people. Can't remember. Some big book. Anyway, uh, we'll be we'll be back to talk about Sky King in just a second. Okay, so the second Randy article we read was about the Sky King,
Richard Russell.
Richard Russell, and it's been I think 4 years since his fateful
Yeah.
loop de loop and his one of the few suicides, maybe along with Misha's, that are our side kind of honors.
Yeah, and just to know, I think you already mentioned this, or maybe you didn't on the show, but you're saying like he wrote this. Randy wrote this article like what, a day after. He was
Yeah,
like he
it's
dialed in right from the start.
and everything he's saying is like what would be said over the next weeks, and when people are trying to justify why they like him, why they like the Sky King, and what
Yeah,
it
it's
means to
interesting. Like
them.
yeah, you see you would think this article was written, a year later, or 2
Yeah,
years later, because it encapsulates what people always say. So
it's like a remarkable achievement, and it's a proof of Randy's insight, which is why I let some of his bad writing just go, because he's extremely insightful. Um, yeah. So, what do you think? What have you always thought of Sky King? And do you remember when it happened?
I don't I don't really remember when it happened, and I didn't I, like this might sound a little bit cold or like I honestly have never really cared that much. I never really looked into it
Okay.
very much. Like this, I saw the recordings maybe a year after or maybe a couple months. I don't even remember. I just was like, wow, that's kind of sad, and he hit on some points that I'm sure, uh, you know, yeah, I guess I agree on, and yeah, sure, tragic, but I honestly never was that invested, and I didn't really find it uh,
Meaningful.
yeah, exactly, that meaningful one way or the other.
Okay. Well,
Like
uh,
this article is probably the most I've read up on Sky King,
yeah.
and
Well, I think this article expresses. I don't think I can say it better than the article does. That's always been my feeling. I was on 4chan that day. I don't not
uh-huh.
often on there. Never have been on there very much, but I was that day, and I remember seeing it all go down, and I instantly felt he was a sort of folk hero. in a sort of avatar of how everyone was feeling there that day in 2017, 18, regardless. Is a bit of a loser. Not really, but he just, I think his engagement had just been broken off. He was having some kind of mild woman trouble. He was a baggage handler who wanted to be a pilot. So he took he did a bold move, stole a plane, and kissed the sky. It's, you know what? I don't got too much to say about it either. He's not an example. He's not a hero in the sense that I would hope that people follow his example. Quite the opposite. He's a hero in the sense, he's a folk hero. He's his death and his actions at the end mean a particular thing. So, I don't know. What is the category and myth of that kind of hero or protagonist?
Well, I mean, there's like tragic hero, and that would probably fit the bill. And I mean, you have, I don't know, you have Orpheus or Oedipus.
Yeah. They're kind of like cautionary tales at the same time as being heroes.
Yeah, and I think more so, like to an extent, yeah, I feel bad for the guy, and he had it sounds like he had a rough situation and things weren't going well, and
it wasn't that rough. It was actually almost perfectly average.
Oh, well, then that's because I guess my thing is I when I read any of this, I just see it and I think, like, were things really that bad? And I know when you feel okay because you got the diversity stuff, and like, yeah, diversity means anti-white, means less white, and okay, he sees that in the hiring practices. You feel like he's getting boxed out. I understand that, but the reality is that there's a lot that you can make work, and there's a lot that there's still a lot of opportunity, and just because you see the quarter closing doesn't mean it's over. And I think the thing that almost to me that makes this less meaningful, just from I don't like getting into too like objective, like, well, here's the factual reality of the situation, because I feel like that diminishes, and it's kind of like a stupid like approach. But let's not forget that like piloting is vastly majority white, and I'm not sure that's going to change. So in his particular example, I'm not sure that fits the bill as much as what a lot of other guys have to go through in their their fields and how they're. I'm not even saying, well, his personal experience doesn't count because his field is still dominated by. I just say that is a point to note, and in the grander sphere of what's going on, it just doesn't hit as hard. And I feel like the damage that this guy caused to his own family by doing this is probably wasn't worth it. And I think even Randy applauds him for going through the process of actually not hurting anyone through his actions, not causing any physical harm. But remember, this guy still had a family. Like, there's still people in his life that actually did care about him, and maybe he didn't feel that as much. But I think letting that go in that moment was. I don't look on that very favorably.
You know what, Charles? I think it's because you're viewing him like too much of a real person, and you're looking at the situation as too real a situation. And in that case, like, I agree with you. It's the myth. It's the myth that he represents that's noble, and only in an artistic way. yeah, from every practical thing, I think I think it's really not a good idea to end your life for almost any reason. I think there's always something beautiful around the corner. So if I'm thinking of him as a real person, yeah, all that. No, I do not condone and not good. I don't think of him like a real person. It's a story on the internet, and it's that story that I like.
Hmm. Well, and that's why I said, I don't want to get too much
Yeah,
into,
yeah,
being overly empirical and fact based, but that gnaws at me when we take this sort of uncritical, you know, just a acceptance of the myth in itself. And I think Randy had some interesting things to say. Like the myth he represents is Spartacus, the spirit of adventure, the lust for freedom.
mm-hmm.
Um, he says what made him crack wasn't any kind of internal problem, some sickness or disease. There was nothing wrong with Richard.
No.
He was too honest a man to be able to continue suffering the indignity of modern life, and claimed most striking metaphor humanity has ever thought of for the experience of autonomy, flight, free as a bird. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think that's an interesting thing to mythologize him with, but at the same time, I don't necessarily see that being represented. Randy talks about like a feeling that you feel instinctually that you're just going to love him. And Randy doesn't actually says he's like, you have to let the actions speak for themselves, and that's just where it doesn't really hit me personally. So I guess there's going to be a lot of divide on that. I might be the only one, but um,
It's a piece of art. I don't know any other way to explain it. So if it doesn't strike you or if it's not talking to you, I wouldn't. Uh, Not every piece of art is going to hit everyone the same way all the time or at different times of their lives and all that. Um, yeah, no, I don't. I don't. You're not wrong, and I don't. Uh, what what the whole thing gives you is just a feeling. It's a certain bitter, sweet melancholy. Um,
yeah, and for me, that's just where it doesn't hit the mark because I don't really feel that melancholy. And Randy talks about the um, avoiding being strangled by the spiritlessness of technology, and like he says in what I just quoted there, he was too honest to suffer the indignity of
mhm.
modern life. I mean, is that maybe I'm just arguing for the sake of arguing, but it is the honest thing to do to say I like to just end it because you don't want to suffer indignity. Like
No,
that
it's
just doesn't strike me as that powerful of approach. And saying like that you're lost in the spiritlessness of technology, you're strangled by it. I mean,
you should surf on it. You should like use it and harness it. That's what we
yeah,
always
and
say.
I just
But
I get
again,
like the
you're
masses.
looking at it too like it's
I know. I just don't. This is where like the feeling doesn't strike, and I guess why I end up in this sort of really factually based approach because um, I see it and I see there's so much opportunity to flourish and to engage in the spiritual and to still feel very fulfilled despite everything going on. I think that's what makes it more powerful. Is despite all this indignity and uh, you know suffocation of technology, you can still feel deeply in a very spiritual sense, and that's why I don't like the appeal to the melancholy of this whole artistic or myth
yeah.
because I don't want to imbibe that feeling at all. It doesn't like I want to drink deep despite all of that.
Hmm. Well, it's like maybe it's like Richard Houck's. Is that how you say it? His 7-Eleven posting. 7-Eleven nationalism's bad and dumb. from every pragmatic sense, and there's nothing that special about a 7-Eleven. But by capturing that feeling of nostalgia, with nostalgia itself being a kind of self-destructive and useless feeling, but just that moment of nostalgia can then propel you, can show you, it can propel you to a better myth and a better hero and a better form of nationalism. I think is useful in that regard. And I think so probably this hero, this folk hero, an early one in the movement here, I think he is sort of a necessary precursor to some true hero, like some, whatever, the next Alexander the Great, or whatever people think is coming, or the next hero we can't even think of yet. Maybe the one Josh Neal is talking about, someone of the internet age who can harness that to our use. I don't even disagree with you. It's hard to put your finger on.
Well, I think you might be right in the idea that it's a precursor. And the one thing I like, I think Randy finished up with this story about his grandfather, and they found a 10-year-old boy just behind a ridge when they were out at the lake, and he just says his grandpa said that they found it just one day too late, just a body.
Mm-hmm.
And he just says without he just says straight, like, people can be so cruel to one another. That his grandfather, and I think that's a fair way to sum it up, right? He says that's how he feels about Richard Russell. One moment he looks like the most pitiful man in the world and the greatest man in the world all at once.
Yep.
So I can agree in that, in the way he wrapped it up with that. And that aspect, that notion of, like, you just found the young child one day too late. He's already a corpse. And so I think in that notion of the necessary precursor, I think your assessment is correct. There is nothing that we could do. That's just what it is.
Yeah. Anyway, I liked I thought it was the best use of the Tony Soprano in this house. X and Y is a hero. Best use of that meme I'd seen in a while was for Sky King. In this house, Sky King is a hero. I already posted that one. But anyway, let's move on to, we're just going to talk about something else, and we'll be right back. So, Charles, hear any good music lately? People are really liking your outro selections.
Oh, they better like those. You guys better listen to all the music that I recommend, because your music taste will be 10 times, 300 times better than the average.
I just remembered I promised someone I'd make a proper playlist out of all the ones we've done so far.
Yeah.
So remind me to do that, somebody.
That'd be great. That'd be a pretty sweet playlist. There'll be a little bit of variation within that, I think. Yeah. Yeah. Some underrated bands here and there, stuff that you wouldn't normally hear. I think there's a lot of interesting musical styles coming out. I mean, mostly in the metal genre, because that's what I stick to. But there's a lot of variation within that. Have you ever listened to Between the Buried and Me?
No.
See, I feel like your generation, younger, middle millennials. Middle millennials would have been into them. Maybe it was younger millennials, but yeah, kind of like 2000s. I guess you could say metalcore band, but like would usually have a twist in the mix. They would have like polka stuff, coming down.
That sounds up my alley.
But they have a new album out. It's a couple months out now, but I was literally just listening to the one song I really like, I think it's called like the Double Helix of Extinction, and that one's got a little like samba breakdown,
Nice.
right in the middle, like just it's blasting off heavy stuff, and then it just breaks it down samba style. So I like that kind of thing.
Yeah, keeps you guessing, keeps it interesting. Yeah, I've actually I was out at the farm, came back, I started listening to bluegrass the whole way back.
Oh, nice.
I'd forgotten how much I like bluegrass.
Yeah, that's
especially with
fun.
they're real speed demons. They can sure pick fast, those boys. And super wholesome stuff too, for the most part.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, I learned from one thing I learned from bluegrass. You know what they call what one word for moonshine is? Mountain Dew. So I'm listening to this old bluegrass songs. It's all about pour some Mountain Dew into my jug or whatever. I'm like, oh, gamer moment. That's awesome.
That must be where Mountain Dew is named.
It must be.
That's pretty. You know what? That makes me want to drink Mountain Dew.
Actually, they should really lean into that on their marketing.
Yeah, they gotta get moonshine flavored Mountain Dew.
Instead of like 90s extreme, they could put a nice brown label on there with like 4 X's. Maybe a little handle on the,
if they lean into their, their extreme, their gamer,
gamer fuel.
Yeah, hey, what's more extreme than moonshine?
Yeah, that shit'll make you go blind.
So you're a real gamer.
Yeah.
Hard R.
Gamers are the most depressed people.
The real G Fuel was moonshine all along.
Yeah. Yeah. I got nothing more to say about moonshine, except that I'll probably wind up selling it at some point in my life. I would be really shocked if it didn't come to that.
Hey, whatever pays the bills.
Yeah, whatever floats your gills.
That's not a saying.
I noticed when I was editing that you end probably about 40% of episodes with telling me whatever floats your goat.
I've never said that in my life.
Yeah, okay, good thing we didn't capture it on air or have any recordings. But
yeah, I implore you to find me saying that phrase.
Can someone please make a super cut of Charles saying whatever floats your goat?
That's such a stupid thing. Like, who would say is something that dumb? Float your goat. That doesn't even make any sense.
Add this one he just said now to the supercut.
No, don't. Humbucker, edit that out. Cut it. Put it on the cutting room floor. It's garbage.
Humbucker, don't listen to Charles. You know who pays you. Nobody. And there's a good reason for that. Alright, we'll see you all next week.
See ya.